Welcome to the StockMiner.com studios here in the beautiful white Black Hills of South Dakota. I'm your stockminer, Brian Johnson, having a little bit of snow here today. Usually get a couple of these before the summer finally hits, but a little bit of a dusting out here in the hills, which actually makes things extremely pretty from our side, where we can see the beautiful pines up in the hills, just lightly covered in snow. And it's really, really, really pretty coming into spring. Not only that, but as the temperatures warm up, it's not near as bad as it is in like a February or a January time frame. So definitely a beautiful time out here in the hills with the snow just kind of hanging on to the pines in some of the last snowfalls. We love to see it. All right, so with that happening, I was able to sit inside today, watch the markets for a while, and we had a pretty decent trending day today. Things were basically up most of the day. After the beginning and the open, we had a little bit of a drop to the downside, but it didn't last very long, bouncing off some support areas, and you'll see those in a second, and taking a move to the upside most, if not all, of the rest of the day. Market internals were okay. We didn't see a lot of power from the internals, but the point was the bulls did try to kind of bounce this a little bit. You can see us hitting right here off of this 200 rolling through here. Definitely one of our targets, this 12,150-ish area here down in the 200. Took a very nice bounce today, right off that level, and it was up from that time forward. Now look what we did. Bounced off this support right into overhead resistance, sat at overhead resistance before finally poking our head through at the end of the day, not giving us a lot to go on into tomorrow. Kind of back to some upper areas that we've been watching for a while, but this 12 kind of 300 to 12,450 was our area to watch, with lower support being here. It's held and worked very, very well so far. You can see a huge move on the daily. We'll call that a hammer, if you will, as we hit this lower, not only the 200 on the 60-minute, but also the 50-day moving average right down into that area, stopped, moved right back up, only to slice through the 20 and the 50 and reclaim it all by the end of the day. That is certainly not all that bearish. So the bulls being able to do what they have done in the past time and time and time again, and that is the bears drag it down and the bulls go, yeah, not so fast by the end of the day. So this move here still puts us in kind of a quandary from the standpoint of what direction are we going to go next. This definitely would lend itself to maybe a little bit more of a bullish look. This is what you're kind of looking for, this hammer type candle in the middle of nowhere here. Not a bad place to see this, especially based on the fact that it wanted to hold these levels. I really still believe, guys, that earnings are going to make a big difference with the markets. If we continue to move down tomorrow, I just think the bears are going to have their way. They're going to have that opportunity to push this thing back to the downside again. Now, back up and above about 12,300-ish or so, the bulls definitely have their chance now to move this thing upwards. Does that mean the new highs? Not convinced yet, but definitely above 12,300, I could see 12,400 in the cards. Definitely be watching those coming into tomorrow morning's trading. And this is options expiration week. For those of you that follow along, you know that there's typically a lot of volatility that happens during the course of the week, and we have seen it. Big drop to the downside, just kind of a sideways day yesterday, but a huge drop again today, followed by a lot of volatility back to the upside. This is very common during an options expiration week to see this kind of movement happen. Tomorrow ends the week, so we see options expiration week kind of come to a finale as of tomorrow. Let's see if that makes any difference for the bulls. Even the NASDAQ here, after yesterday, had a little bit of a move up, and then we saw yesterday kind of pull back. Today, same type of motion. I'm really watching this overhead area here in the NASDAQ. That'll be crucial going forward for the bulls to reclaim that area. Any moves back below here? Okay, now we have to look at that bear side. What we're seeing here overall is a bull pullback in the bigger picture. That is on all of the indices so far. NASDAQ daily doing the same thing. You can see the drops, the attempted drops below the 20-day only to reclaim it. Here, drop below it, reclaim it. Today, drop below it, reclaim it. There's obviously a need to hold these lower areas here below that 2300, especially on the NDX. There's a lot of buyers down in that area. What we're seeing here, still a big pullback. It's a huge bull pullback, but it's still a bullish pullback. We have not broken these lower levels down here. This will be a little bit more major sign from a bull standpoint, or a major sign from a bear standpoint, if you will, once these lower levels are broken. But for the time being, this move right here is bullish. It's just a very slow, very controlled pullback by the bulls at this point. Weekly, same type of thing. This is where it's bouncing, guys. 20-week moving average, just sitting right there. And if this finishes in or around this area tomorrow, guess what? All we have here is a bull pullback in action again. So confirmation on multiple time frames. You can see it happening right here. SPX 60 minutes, same type of a thing. Bounced right off these lower levels of 1305 and 1300. This is a big gap right in through here of good, solid, lower support. That'll be the area to be watching coming into tomorrow, especially the 1300 area. But right here, we're trapped between about 1305 and 1315-ish or so. You can see it's just bouncing in this area, have been for the last couple days, waiting for a move one way or the other. We've had decent moves to the downside. With the subscribers, we've been short since 1330 and 1325 and 1320. Those were the entries to the short side if you're following along on the subscribers newsletter. And right now we're in some profits, have been able to take some profits. Now we're going to start to look at places to cover and make some money on the trade coming into the end of the week. If we look at this SPX daily, you can see we drop down into these levels, and this is the one kind of snafu here on the SPX chart, and that is 1-2 closes below the 20 and the 50-day moving averages. Now today, yeah, we can kind of call that a hammer candle if you want. It's what I'm not going to split hairs on what type of a candle it is. But with the trend we saw today, it was a bullish trend for a day. However, got to see it get back above those moving averages. That'll be important if the buyers are going to move back into this thing, and more importantly, if the sellers are going to start to get out of this thing. That's absolutely what you want to watch coming into tomorrow. Now, we're right there. We're 2 points away, so watch for gaps in the morning one way or the other based on what kind of earnings we see tonight and tomorrow morning. I think Google has earnings tonight, so that may have some sort of an effect on the NASDAQ, but overall you want to be able to watch this moving average area very, very closely in tomorrow's trading. The VIX, look at this, down. So we've talked about this before. I don't know what else to say except that obviously, even though the markets are really not going anywhere, I mean, they were, for all intents and purposes, break even on the day. Look, the VIX was way down, 3.8% by the end of the day. Now, we have seen this area hold and lead to some pretty decent pops in the market. Doesn't happen in one day. It usually takes a little bit of time. But point being, it's been stuck between 16 and 18. And overall, from a weekly, here we are right at, around, and on this blue line. So if you want to hold on to one shred of bullishness left in the bullishness left in the VIX, this is it. The fact that it's holding this weekly line is actually still bullish for the time being, but it's just not gaining any ground whatsoever after this huge pop we saw a few weeks back. The VIX is down, the markets are break even. There's just no panic at all from an options standpoint at this juncture. Apple, 60-minute, down $3.71, holding beautifully this 330 area. Look at that. Beautiful support down here. Breaks of that 330, be cautious. Right now, little bounce to the upside, pull back as it enters overhead resistance, pulling back and kind of sitting tight right at the 332 mark. On the daily, you can see right up into overhead resistance and now pulling back today. This was a beautiful trade to be watching this overhead level. This was acted and was perfect overhead resistance on the retest to the upside. So here we are with a candle stuck between the 330 and the 336 area, and this is exactly what you're watching going forward in Apple. 330, 336. It really doesn't get a whole lot more simple than that. We're stuck in a little bit of a range here. You're just looking for a break one way or the other on Apple. Paying close attention to the fact that Apple does report, I think it's next week, so you want to be cautious holding over the weekend. Just in case you want to be cautious holding over the weekend. From a weekly here, you can see it also below the 20-week moving average. Not looking good right here for Apple. It really needs to hold 330. The bigger number is 325 and 320. Those are the larger numbers for Apple to really be careful of going forward. If you're long Apple, those are absolutely levels you want to be watching as well if you're an Apple bull. It's too easy to convince yourself that Apple's going to report really well and price is going to skyrocket. Let me just warn you against that type of thinking. That's a gambler's mentality. You got to be very careful around earnings. You really do. Because Apple can report awesome earnings and fall $8. You just don't know. It's always a gamble when it comes to earnings. FAS dropped to the downside and moved sideways. You can't trade this. This is very, very difficult to trade. A beautiful move yesterday. So if you were watching our levels that we talked about a couple days ago, you had great moves yesterday to play with as we gapped up and then broke down through some of these lower levels. But today, see this? The gap down, a little bit of up, a little bit of down. You can't trade that. It's very, very difficult. Below 28.50 and above, maybe 29.50 if you want to try some speculative trades tomorrow on FAS, long and short. And from FAZ, you can see the gap up and the move sideways doesn't give us much to work with. We did get up and into some of these overhead areas. Remember I talked about 42, 43 being kind of the area for me to be watching to the long side here? We're getting close. We're getting close. I'd watch this overhead blue line, which is now around 43. So I'm still not real bullish on this until we get up and over this area here. So 43, 43.50, those are your areas to be watching to the long side. To the short side, back below the moving averages. We'll see if they can't hold this time. We've had it kind of a decent bounce here in FAZ. Certainly not indicative of anything major yet. Not anything major yet. So just from a financial standpoint, they're just really difficult to trade right now. You get a couple of really good days of movement and then a lot of consolidation in the financials. A lot of consolidation. Okay, that'll do it for today's video. I should be back with you again on, try to do one for you again tomorrow night. Kind of wrap up the week, see where we're at, and see how we did for the week coming out of options expiration week and getting ready for another new week starting Monday. I should be around all day, and so if you guys have any questions on the mentoring, any questions on the subscriptions, by all means, please send me an email, give me a call, and let's chat about it. Talk to you guys again later. Bye.